Hello, my name is Dr. Paul Leslie, and I'm going to be your instructor for the GDE PME 832 spring semester course. So I just wanted to do a little short video and tell you a little bit about myself and then explain a little bit more about the course so that when Monday hits May 4th, you'll be all ready for the course. So let's have a look. First of all, I'll just give you a quick brief overview of myself. You'll find this, here's the course. So when you get access to the course, you can come in here and have a look at my background. You'll see I'm from Nova Scotia, where I am currently living, although I have spent more than 30 years teaching in forest countries, including Korea, Brunei, UAE, Australia, and so forth. I've taught at all levels from K to 6, 6 to 12, college, undergraduate, and now I'm teaching in these master level programs for Queens. And I've been teaching with Queens since 2016. Most recently, I just returned from Abu Dhabi in January, where I was the division chair for education at the higher colleges, and also previously served as the teaching practice coordinator. So I've spent an awful lot of time, years in fact, visiting schools all across the United Arab Emirates, mostly primary schools, but also quite a few high schools and so forth. Anyways, enough about me. You can read a bit more about my background here if you so are interested. But let's have a look at the course. So the course, I'll send this to you and it'll be attached to the email that I'm going to send out in a couple of days. So I'll send you the syllabus and a document that I put together with all of the dates and so forth. So I'll come back to these dates just to highlight a couple of points. But the course is called The Connected Classroom. So you're going to do a brief introduction of yourself and describe how are you connected to your place. So from an Indigenous perspective or Indigenous and First Peoples principles of learning, how do you understand your place, like where you live, both your community and your professional context. At the same time, you're going to start to look at how do you connect your students to their class, curriculum, and community. So those three aspects are really the focus of this connection. So as we'll see later on, we'll talk quite a bit about technology as a tool to facilitate those connections, but the connections themselves are really to the other students in their class, to the curriculum itself, and how does that curriculum come to life in their community. And then you're going to look at pedagogic approaches. So how can you refine your curriculum and pedagogic approach to improve these connections for your students? So we're going to examine some pedagogic approaches and how do these align with what you currently do. Then we're going to look at some case studies and see how these pedagogic approaches come to life in some of these case studies of different types of schools. All of the case studies are based within Canada, of course. And then your first assignment, which will be halfway through the course, will be you will select your own case study and you will examine it and sort of dissect it for us and examine some of the pedagogic approaches behind that case study. Then we will, in fact, look at some technology. So we'll look at a few tools and what tools you are already using and how do you use those to help your students make better connections to their peers, to the curriculum, and to their community. And then after we look at the tools you're using, we'll look at some principles behind the use of any kind of tools and discuss, well, how can you make the best use of these tools, or are you in fact already making the best use of these tools? And then finally, and as I'll point out in just a moment, as we go through those last two modules, you should really be digging into your final culminating task, which is to connect. First, you'll think about how do I connect my new learning to my own teaching experience? And then you will design a connected experience for your students. So I won't go too much into that right now. Certainly as we progress through the course, I'll look at each of these assignments in modules in a more detail, but for now I'm just highlighting how they are all connected. So let me just look at the dates here as well. So it's a 7-week course. So that means usually these courses are done in 10 weeks. So we're taking the 10-week course and fitting it into the 7 weeks. So it does make it a little bit busier. So on that note, the first 2 modules, the course introduction module and module 1, you'll note, are actually concurrent. So we'll run both of those at the same time. The first one is really you thinking about, again, your connections to your own community. And then you're going to do an annotated mind map of connections. So I think those two really go together. You'll be thinking about your own connections to your community and how do you help your students make those similar connections. So that will be a mind map. Then the rest of the modules, well, the next 2 modules, I should say, will be a week. So for the pedagogic approaches that support connected learning, and you'll be connecting some of the theories I mentioned to your mind map. And then for module 3, we'll take 2 weeks to work through module 3. So the first week will be another case study. We'll look at some of the case studies I mentioned. And then you'll find your own case study for this assignment. And so you'll have some extra time to do that. Then there's the mid-course self-assessment. I don't normally do anything with those. If you want to talk to me about anything, that's great. Otherwise, it is a self-assessment, so it's up to you to determine what you want to do with that time and space. Then we'll do modules 4 and 5 with a week each. And then finally, the closing module, as I said, technically there's only the last 5 or 6 days for that closing module, June 5th to 19th. However, as I pointed out, you should be digging right into that right after the theory and practice assignment is submitted. So you will really have almost 3 weeks. You have about 4 weeks to do the first assignment and about 3 weeks to really think about the second assignment. Now, of course, all of the modules will contribute to your ability and competency to complete those assignments, but you should be thinking about and planning out what you're going to do with those assignments over a few weeks period. Okay, so as I note, I'll dig into each of these modules a bit more in detail as we progress. But for now, I try to keep my videos fairly short. So on that note, I'll stop right here. Okay, great.